The laughter started before Theo had fully entered the room. He had pushed open the wrong door. The conference room was adjacent to the lobby corridor, and he had been looking at the floor number on the package he was carrying and had simply opened the wrong one. The moment he registered the boardroom, the long table, the dozen people in corporate attire, the wall-length screen displaying a quarterly revenue chart, he stopped. But in the half-second before he stopped, Marcus Reed had seen him. Marcus Reed was the CEO of Veritech Systems, a position he had held for 6 years, having built the company from its Series B funding round to its current standing as one of the more respected mid-sized technology firms in the Mountain West. He was 52, silver-haired, with the specific confidence of a man who has been the most important person in most rooms he has entered for long enough that this has simply become how rooms feel to him. He laughed, genuinely, without deliberate malice, the instinctive response of a man surprised by something incongruous and whose reaction time is faster than his filter. A young man in a red delivery uniform standing open-mouthed in the boardroom doorway with a package under his arm. "Wrong room, buddy," Marcus said. The room laughed with him. It was the easy, ambient laughter of people who are comfortable with each other and with themselves, who have just been given permission by the most powerful person at the table to find something funny. Theo James looked at the room. He looked at it calmly and without visible discomfort, which was perhaps the first unexpected thing about him. He looked at the whiteboard behind Marcus, where the morning's agenda was written in blue marker. He looked at Marcus. "Actually," Theo said, "I'm not here to deliver anything." The laughter stopped, completely, in the specific way that laughter stops when the premise that produced it has just been removed. "My name is Theo James. I was in the lobby making a delivery when Mr. Castellano—" He nodded toward Carlos, who was sitting halfway down the table and who was, at this moment, wearing an expression of complete composure that was costing him considerable effort. "Stopped me. He said you had a system problem and that he had heard I might be able to help." The room looked at Carlos. Carlos nodded once. The room looked at Theo. Marcus Reed set down his pen. Carlos Castellano was Veritech's head of engineering. He was also, outside of work, an active member of what he called the Underground, an informal community of technical people with no official name, no membership dues, no credentials of any kind, operating entirely on reputation built through demonstrated capability. The community existed primarily on forums that predated modern social media. Text-based, deliberately anonymous, populated by people who had learned to evaluate the quality of thinking rather than the credentials of thinkers. Carlos had been a participant for 12 years. He had seen things on those forums that he had not seen from engineers with PhDs from the best institutions. He had also seen things from people who, it eventually emerged, worked in warehouses and drove trucks and held jobs that bore no relationship to the technical sophistication of their contributions. The Handle theorist had been a presence on the Distributed Systems Forum for 3 years. Carlos had been following theorists' work for 2 of those 3 years. He had watched theorists answer problems that senior engineers from major tech companies posted in visible frustration, problems with hundreds of comments and no resolution, until theorist appeared and, in clean, methodical, unpretentious prose, explained exactly what was wrong and exactly how to fix it. Not showily, not with the performance of intelligence. Simply, here is the problem, here is why it exists, here is what addresses it. When Veritech's core recommendation engine had begun returning corrupted outputs 3 days ago, random intervals, no consistent trigger, resistant to every diagnostic approach his team had tried, Carlos had posted on the forum at midnight. Theorist had responded at 1:15 a.m. with a 17-line diagnosis that had made Carlos sit up straight in his chair and read it 3 times. He had been doing this work for 20 years. He knew when he was reading something correct. He had messaged Theorist directly. They had agreed to meet. Carlos had given his office address. He had not known until a young man in a red delivery uniform walked into his lobby with a package for the 4th floor, who Theorist was. He had brought him upstairs anyway, because the 17 lines had been correct, and the 17 lines were the point. Marcus Reed spent the first 40 minutes of Theo's presence in the boardroom trying, in the professional and entirely unconscious way of powerful people managing incongruous situations, to make it go away. He was not a bigot. He was not consciously dismissive of Theo as an individual. He was a man whose mental map of the world, built over 52 years of specific experience, had categories. And Theo James violated the categories associated with the kind of person who belonged in a boardroom discussion about enterprise software architecture. He was young. He was black. He was in a delivery uniform. He had introduced himself without a company name, without a university, without a credential of any kind. Marcus's discomfort expressed itself as questions. "What is your background?" Marcus asked. "Formally." "Self-taught," Theo said. "I have been writing code since I was 12. Distributed systems specifically for about 4 years." "And your academic background?" "I do not have a degree." "Right," Marcus said. There was a pause in which everyone at the table was fully aware of what Marcus was doing, and nobody said so. "Marcus," Carlos said. 3 words. In the flat, certain tone of someone who has already decided something and is done having the conversation about it. Marcus looked at him. "Let him look at the system." Marcus looked at Theo, at the delivery uniform, at the package that someone had set on the table near the door because nobody had known what else to do with it. "Could I ask?" Theo said, not impatiently, not with the edge the situation warranted, but with the directness of someone who has decided that the fastest path through is the work itself. "Could I ask what you actually need help with? Because I can try to make a case for why I might be useful. Or we could just look at the problem and see whether I am." The room was quiet. "The recommendation engine," Marcus said finally. "It is returning corrupted outputs at random intervals. 3 days, no root cause identified." "What is the pattern in the corrupted outputs?" Theo asked. "Is there anything consistent about when they appear?" Marcus looked at one of his engineers. Joanna, 15 years of experience, said, "High-traffic volume events. It does not happen on average traffic, only when we are running at peak load." Theo nodded. "Can I access the code base?" Marcus looked at Carlos. Carlos nodded. Theo was given access at 10:30 a.m. He worked alone at a workstation in the corner of the room. The meeting continued around him, and Theo was, apparently, entirely unaffected by the ambient noise. He read code the way some people read novels, quickly, with complete absorption, moving through sections at a pace that suggested comprehension rather than scanning. He had a spiral-bound notepad from a drugstore. He made notes. Not many. A few lines, a small timing diagram, something that looked like a sequence annotation. At 11:47 a.m. he said, to no one in particular and to everyone, "I found it." The meeting paused. Theo stood up. He walked to the whiteboard. He picked up a marker. "The cache invalidation logic," he said. "There's a race condition in the implementation." He drew a timing diagram. Quick, precise, the diagram of someone who has already worked this out completely in their head and is now simply transcribing it. It occurs when two specific user interaction patterns happen within a 200 millisecond window. Under normal traffic, this window almost never closes naturally. Under high traffic, your peak load events, it closes with near certainty. Every time it closes, the cache invalidation logic returns a corrupted state that propagates directly into the recommendation output. He capped the marker. The fix is in the cache invalidation sequence. You need a mutex lock on this operation. He circled something on the diagram that prevents the second interaction from modifying the cache state until the first invalidation has fully completed. Approximately a dozen lines of code. The testing protocol needs to specifically simulate high traffic conditions to confirm the race condition is resolved, because at normal traffic levels the fix will appear identical to the unfixed version. He set the marker down on the whiteboard tray. The room was quiet. Joanna, 15 years of experience, the most technically rigorous person in Marcus's engineering team, was looking at the whiteboard with the specific expression of someone who has been examining a problem from the wrong angle and has just had the angle corrected. "That is right," she said. She said it plainly, without qualification, without the hedging that professional pride sometimes inserts between recognition and acknowledgement. She had been in that codebase for 3 days. The race condition was real. The fix was correct. She said so. Marcus Reed was looking at the whiteboard and saying nothing. "We want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments where in the world you are listening to this story from. If HeartLineStories has ever moved you or surprised you or given you something to think about, please like, subscribe, and share this channel. Every subscriber is an encouragement to keep going. Now, back to Theo. Because the conversation outside the boardroom is about to matter just as much as what happened inside it. Theo fixed the cache invalidation logic in 40 minutes, working alongside Joanna and another senior engineer. He explained every step. He answered every question. Technically specific, genuinely curious questions, with the patience and clarity of someone who has taught himself complex things and therefore knows exactly where the confusing parts are and why they are confusing. When the fix was deployed, tested against simulated peak load conditions and confirmed, Theo closed the editor, picked up his spiral notebook, and checked his phone. 3 more stops, he said. I should go. Carlos walked him to the elevator. The corridor outside the boardroom was quiet. The boardroom door was closed behind them. "I want to talk to you about a consulting arrangement," Carlos said. "Paid, properly paid." "I am listening," Theo said. "What you did in there, the diagnostic process, the speed, the clarity of the explanation, the way you handled the questions. I have been in engineering leadership for 15 years. That combination is uncommon. It is uncommon from people with 20 years of experience and degrees from the best programs in the country." He paused. "Can I ask you something directly?" "Go ahead. Why delivering packages?" Theo was quiet for a moment. Not because the question made him uncomfortable, but because he was deciding how much of the real answer to give. "It pays," he said, "and it is morning work. I do my route from 7 to noon, and then I have the afternoon for the things I actually want to think about. Nobody in a delivery uniform is expected to have opinions about distributed systems architecture, which means I can work on distributed systems architecture in the afternoons without anyone deciding in advance what I am capable of before I have had a chance to show them." Carlos looked at him for a moment. "Until today," he said. Theo smiled. It was small and real, and the first time all morning his face had done anything other than the steady, neutral professional attention he had maintained through several hours of being looked at sideways. "Until today," he agreed. Marcus Reed found Carlos the next morning. He came to Carlos's office. Unusual, the hierarchy normally ran the other way, and sat down without being invited and did not look completely comfortable doing it. "The consulting arrangement," Marcus said. "Yes. I would like to be part of that conversation." Carlos studied him. "I behaved badly yesterday," Marcus said. "Not as performance, as statement. Not in one specific moment I can point to. In the general way of someone who had already decided what the situation was before looking at it. And I was wrong. I would like to do something about that in a form that is actually useful, that serves the work, rather than just standing here apologizing." Carlos said, "I will set up the meeting. Whether it goes well is between you and Theo." Marcus nodded. "That is fair." The meeting happened the following Tuesday. Theo arrived on time in his own clothes, dark jeans and a plain sweater, and sat across from Marcus and Carlos in the same conference room where the laughter had happened. He did not make it easy. He did not smooth things over or pretend the previous week had not had a shape. When Marcus acknowledged what had happened, Theo listened completely and then said, "Here is what I need in order to do good work." He named specific things, credit for his contributions documented under his own name, a rate that reflected the actual value of what he was providing, and the ability to decline work that was not interesting to him. "Those are terms I would associate with employment rather than consulting," Marcus said. "They are negotiable," Theo said, "but those are the parameters." Marcus looked at Carlos. Carlos said nothing. Marcus looked at Theo. "All right," he said. The consulting arrangement became a contract. The contract became, 3 months later, a staff role. Lead systems engineer, on terms Theo had set, at a salary that reflected what the diagnostic session had demonstrated his work was worth. He gave notice on his delivery route at the end of that quarter. He had made a commitment to his supervisor, a man named Pete who had been running that route for 12 years, and he honored it for the full notice period. On his last day on the route, Pete asked where he was going. "Systems engineering for a technology company," Theo said. Pete nodded. "Good for you. I always thought you were doing something else in your head while you were driving." "I was," Theo said. He drove the last stops of the last route with the same care he had brought to every other route. He returned the van. He turned in the uniform. He had built his way here from a second-hand laptop in a 12-year-old's bedroom, and the conviction that if you want to understand something, you have to build it. He had built the knowledge. He had built the capability. He had built, for 4 years in the afternoons, a reputation. Under a pseudonym, on a forum, in the clean, precise language of someone who does not need credit to know what they know. And then, one morning, through a wrong door and a room full of laughter, the world had introduced itself. He walked to his car in the parking lot for the last time. The morning was cold and bright and full of the particular promise of a day that is the first of something new. He drove to his new office. He was, for the first time in a long time, exactly on time. If this story reminded you that the most capable person in the room is not always the most visible one, please share it with someone who needs to hear that today. And if you have a story of your own, write to us at HeartLineStories@gmail.com. Every heart has a story worth telling. This is HeartLine Stories, where yours matters.